future. There we go. So we recognize the contributions that they've made, not only to here in Australia, but to across the world and the globe. So thank you for that. I want to start off real quick. As part of our Term 2 venture, we're running a social impact venture that's creating these gratitude cards. So it's your simple standard sort of gratitude cards. I start off on the front, they've got a little bit of a prompt, and on the back, it's got a little bit of what the students have filled in. So these are some examples from a school that we worked with and collected them last December. So they've got a bit of a Christmas theme to them, but we wanted to share a couple of them. And they start off, I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for Miss Kelly. I'm pretty sure that's one of their teachers. We've got a special shout out there to Fred W. We're thankful for him. Someone was really thankful for getting permission to play Minecraft. The Twinkle the Elf, I mentioned it was around Christmas time. And of course, you got to include the guinea pigs into what we're thankful for. But we thought the absolute best was this one here. And not only because it's thankful for his friends and family, but the fact that he's got a hand-drawn picture of Elon Musk. So we are going to actually put that up onto our Twitter feed and give a little bit of a shout out to @Elon Musk. And hopefully we'll get some recognition from him. Personally, we're super thankful for all of you to be able to join us today, as well as for the three panelists we've got joining us from all over the world here. We've got Brandyn from Studying Never Stops, Andrea, and Mitch. And I'd like to just turn it over to each of them to tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you're at, where this finds you, and a little bit about your business, and then we'll jump into some question and answers. So normally we'd go ladies first, but we're gonna go for who's coming from the farthest. So Brandyn, joining us from the United States of America, can you do just a short intro and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're located?
So my name is Brandyn Ross. I'm a 13-year-old entrepreneur. I live in Philadelphia. I sell t-shirts, hoodies, hats, socks, and more. And they say studying never stops.
Awesome, so good. Thank you again for staying up late. Andrea, over to you. I understand you had a bit of a math prac this morning.
Yes. My name is Andrea. I'm the owner of Andy Kent Co. and I sell candles that come in a range of scents and sizes.
Awesome. And you're year 7?
Yes.
Perfect. And over to Mitch. She's got the San Francisco backdrop, but Mitch, tell us a little bit about where you're at this morning.
I'm in Melbourne, a little bit away from home, isolating with COVID, which is just lovely. But my name's Mitch. I'm from IDU, so I run a app-based company that works with nightclubs, bars, pubs, clubs all around Australia. So I'm 20 and I started the business when I was 14.
Nice. So that was in year 9, is that correct, when that first came up?
Yeah, year 9.
Awesome. Well, Brandyn, why don't we bounce back to you, and we're going to take a little bit of a free-falling approach and hopefully get some questions. So for the audience that's out there, if you want to use the chat window and message those over, my name's Jim, my co-founder David, he'll be manning some of the Zoom and the chats window, and we'll get some of these questions up. But to kick things off, Brandyn, can you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and how you sort of came up with this concept of studying never stops?
So I started my first business when I was 9. And when I came up with that, when my bishop said, find something that you love and turn it into a business. And since I love playing basketball and all those are wristbands, I put the two together and created basketball bracelets. And while I was selling the bracelets, I needed a purpose. So I thought of since I had to read for school every day and I went to the barbershop every week, I thought of putting books in barbershops and beauty salons. And that's how I came up with Studying Never Stops. When I was in the barbershop reading a book, I went up to my mom and I was like, Studying Never Stops. At the time, she was making t-shirts, hoodies, hats. So I asked her to put Studying Never Stops on it. People started to say they liked them, so they started doing different pop-up shops and going different places around Philadelphia. And now we're at the Cherry Hill Mall selling our stuff.
Very good, very good. So if there's anybody out there that's kind of listening to this story, is that, can you tell us, was this the moment that the idea Study Never Stops was actually created, Brandon? Can you see the picture up on the screen? Oops, you're on mute still there.
Oh, I can't see it. I don't think I see it.
Gotcha.
Oh, I see it now.
Is that you?
Oh yeah, I remember that picture. Yeah, that's me.
So this is your story. It maps up. That's a young Brandon reading books while you're at the barbershop.
Yeah, that was me. I think that was when I think that's when I came up with the idea of Studying Never Stops. That was the day.
Good, good. And you're on to the retail now with your brand. You're wearing one of your hoodies right there.
Yes, these are what one of our hoodies look like.
That's awesome. Andrea, as you see, we've got a little bit of a theme here moving. Can you tell us a little bit about this picture that you see up on the screen?
So I was helping all of the kids at a school that First Pivot works with, and they were making their own candle business to sell at a school market to raise money for their school.
That's right. That's it. This was at St. Agatha's, where you were actually helping wholesale and allowing our students to white label your candles. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, similar to how Brandon, got his idea from mapping some of his passions? How did you come up with the idea to start a candle business?
Yeah, so one night I just thought, oh, I want an iMac, just suddenly. And Mum was like, oh, I'm not buying that for you. You can find your own way to find the money for it. And then I said, fine, I will. And I was searching for businesses, and candles was one that I really liked the idea of. And I started a candle business, and now I love it.
Did you end up getting the iMac?
Pardon?
Have you bought the iMac?
Not yet. I don't want to waste it yet.
Smart girl. Save that money until you absolutely have to spend it. So, Mitch, I know you're wondering, where is this going? Look at this.
Wow.
Can you share with us a little bit about how it started, how it's going? What are we looking at here?
So
and where are you in that left side picture?
Well, that's a great question, actually. Let me have a look. Yeah, near the right-hand side. Yeah, right there where your mouse is. That was in Philadelphia. In Columbia, in New York, when we went to a school trip in 2017. And we basically visited a bunch of the Ivy League universities and spoke to a bunch of startup founders. I got to go to Google's headquarters, NASA in DC, and a few other kind of really cool places. And then on the right-hand side, that's with Miss Stebbings, the teacher that was teaching the class when I came up with my idea for the business, and a politician in Parliament House in Brisbane.
And what were you meeting there about? What was?
That was basically going through the startup process of launching IDU. Basically, the initial concept was quite a bit different to where I've landed. Initially, it was more so around a concept for being able to have a digital driver's license. And we were going to have to try and change legislation. So I was meeting with a lot of politicians, and Miss Stebbings, being the great teacher she was, she came and supported me outside of her work hours to go to these meetings with politicians and support through other methods as well.
That's great. That's awesome. Just throwing it up to the group, Mitch, you've talked about the importance that your teacher has had. Can any of you talk to, again, who's been the biggest sort of influence in your entrepreneurial journey so far? And feel free to just answer away. Brandon, I see you reaching if you want to start us off.
So my biggest mentor, my biggest mentors were probably my parents, because they really helped me start out my business. And since I was really young while I was doing my business, I really needed a lot of help, and they were there.
That's awesome. That's good. And Andrea, you've actually got a mentor. Can you talk a little bit about that, as well as, who's been your biggest influence?
Yes, so my mentor is Ran, and he kind of found me in a school fundraiser that I did for my school, and he really liked my business idea and he wanted to help me. So he became my mentor. And the biggest influence would probably be my mum and dad, because they support me through everything, and since I'm so young, they help me with things that I haven't learned about yet. And yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. And Mitch, you mentioned your teacher, Morgan, Miss Stebbing. You still call her Miss Stebbing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hard habit to get out of, to be honest. I'm 20 and she's still teaching at the same school. And if I still see her, it's still Miss Stebbings. It's never Morgan. It's a little bit of a hard one to get used to. When you go for calling a teacher by their last name for 5 years, it's a habit that's very, very difficult to break, as you guys will probably find out later after you finish school. Even if I see one of my primary school teachers, it's still the exact same thing. But Miss Stebbings, Morgan, is definitely one of the bigger influences for me. She was a huge supporter. She even came out with me and my mum in grade 9 to a nightclub to stand on the front of the door, and helped us speak to 400 patrons to ask them and do some market research around the concept. So definitely Miss Stebbings and both my parents would be big influences for me.
That's awesome. And Mitch, just staying on you for a little bit, because you're a little bit further down in terms of the journey, the path, starting in year 9. We touched on the importance of mentors. Can you talk a little bit about, do you have any mentors right now, or is there just a loose association, or how do you help get some of that guidance? Because again, being 19, you're doing some amazing things. So hats off to you.
Thank you. I have a full board behind us. So it constitutes a former Attorney General, partner at a law firm, one of our investors, professional board chairman, and a few others. Outside of the board that kind of helps to provide guidance, the owners of the investment company that put into us, and meet with them every week to touch base. And then one of my mates from school, his dad is quite a successful entrepreneur and angel investor. So he's kind of a mentor and guiding light that kind of sits in the background.
That's awesome. I think, again, having a mentor is one of those superpowers that students, everyone has access to it. It's really just about making that effort to, make those connections. And sometimes, they find you. So like I said, Andrea shared the story of how Ran was at that same student meeting, council meeting, and said, I'd like to help you. So Brandyn, going back to you, we're here in Australia. You're there in the United States. Can you talk a little bit about how COVID has affected your business, and give us an understanding of maybe how big is Philadelphia and your market where you're trying to sell your products?
So COVID really, it helped my business a lot. That's kind of actually how this design like grew, because we started making this design during COVID and started selling it during the COVID time. So COVID has really helped our business grow a lot more. And Philadelphia is a really supportive place at certain places. And like if you meet certain people, they will help you, and it's just a really supportive place.
That's good. That's awesome. Andrea, can you talk to us a little bit about how COVID has impacted you? You're in Queensland, up in Brisbane, so you've had a pretty good run up until lately with some of the restrictions and lockdowns for the rest compared to the rest of Australia. But tell us what it's been like for you, for your perspective.
Yeah, so COVID actually made me think of the idea. So I was bored, and I think that's when it all started, because I was bored in isolation, and it actually helped me because I had so much time to work on it and build it to what I wanted it to look be.
That's awesome. That's great. And Mitch, you mentioned you're in isolation today. You came down from Queensland to Victoria. Can you talk to us about what the past couple of years has meant and been like from your perspective and IDU?
On one hand, it was a big help because it sent one of our competitors into liquidation, which was great. So it meant that we could pick up a lot of their customers, which was also beneficial to the point where, because there was less people going out to clubs, it meant that we could have a bit of a soft launch to get through bugs and fix them, because there was less people going out. So therefore less volume going through the system. So on that front, it was good. But on the other front, it cost us a couple $100,000, which was not fun, but kind of pushed through it.
Good, good. Now, the other question I want to ask all of you guys is this your first venture? And Brandyn, you shared with us that you started off sort of selling your basketball bracelets. So we know that this isn't your first venture. Maybe just staying with you right now, Mitch, is IDU Identification your first sort of entrepreneurial venture journey that you've launched?
No, when I was a kid, probably about grade 6, what's that, like 11, yeah, something like that. My parents basically bought a window cleaner, an electric window cleaner, and my parents were amazed at how clean it was making their windows. And so I was really wanting an iPad at the time, and similar to Andrea, my parents said no, that I was going to have to pay for it myself. And so I decided to go around to all of our neighbors, friends and family, and was selling them on cleaning their windows. And then did it with a bunch of other areas, and did that for a few months, really about 6 months, and then ended up buying my iPad. And that was kind of my first kind of entrepreneurial business, I guess.
That's awesome. So you've gone from very sort of low tech window washing to creating an app that validates and securely stores its personal data.
Yeah, it's a bit of a difference, but personally prefer tech rather than service-based business.
Andrea, what can you tell us about your first venture? Is Andy Candle Co. the first business that you've sort of ever launched? Or knowing that your mom and dad are always seem to be very entrepreneurial?
Yes, this is the first business that I've ever launched.
Good, good. So you're
First
one for
idea.
one so far. Where do you see it going? Can you talk to us about where you think what the future holds for Andy Candle Co. and Andrea?
I'd like to get Andy Candle Co. in some big retail stores one day. That's like one of my dreams. So if that could happen, that would be really good.
Nice, nice. Brandyn, back to you. You've shared with us that you started off with the basketball bracelets. Were there any other ventures? And similar to that same question with Andrea, apologies, I've got my dog here in the room I'm patting. Where do you see Studying Never Stops, and where do you see Brandyn and your brand and your business going in the future?
So I didn't have another business besides the basketball bracelet, and I see Studying Never Stops going into different colleges, different stores, different places around the world, and go global, and just getting out there.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if there's anybody that's on the show or watches this show at a later date, if they want to pick up some of the distribution or franchise rights for Studying Never Stops, we should just have them direct message you directly.
Yeah, they could message us on our Instagram, which is Studying Never Stops, or you could go to our website, studyingneverstops.com.
Awesome. Mitch, back up to you, and I say up just because you're at the top of my my viewing list here. You've again, you came up with this idea in year 9. I've still got that picture up on the screen. So, and you're in a place right now. I didn't have a picture, but can you talk a little bit about the size and the scope of your business, and how many employees you're managing? And you're 19 years old. That's correct?
I just turned 20.
Congratulations, even better.
Thank you. We work with 133 nightclubs, bars, pubs, all across Australia. So we're one of only 2 approved companies by the Queensland government. which is really cool. And so I have 15 staff working for me.
15 staff. Wow. And can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned how the idea started and where you landed. What was the original problem that you were trying to solve with the IDU app?
Do you mean the initial problem that Miss Debbing set in the class, or do you mean the initial concept?
Which one would you like to share? Which one makes for more entertaining viewing?
They're both pretty interesting, or hard to choose between one. I'll just do a quick top line overview of both. That the first one, we got kind of set 50 years down the track in future Brisbane, had to come up with one underlying problem, 8 potential problems and choose one underlying problem, and then come up with 8 to 16 solutions to that.
Yep.
And so the initial problem was identity theft, and that was purely because I'd watched the movie Identity Thief or Identity Theft with Melissa McCarthy the week beforehand. And so then the solution to that was going to be the digital identification concept. And so the initial product was a digital version of your driver's license that you could go out anywhere with. And then I was getting mentored by Microsoft in Queensland, and they said, as a 14-year-old, you're unlikely to get access to the government's database, and so that I should pivot it. And so decided to pivot to the alcohol industry, being the next most logical area, because this is when Apple Pay and Samsung Pay was just coming out. And so pivoting to the element of being able to go out with just your phone as a patron to a club was that initial kind of concept.
Awesome. And so here we are now. So year 9, you would have been sort of 12, 13, 7 years later, more or less. You're in a really, really good position.
Yeah, pretty happy with it. It's come a long way since I first started, and it was basically just from speaking to potential customers that they said that they'd had issues with their current system and were asking me to build something that was going to solve their problems.
That's awesome. You mentioned a couple of good points. Earlier you talked about the fact that Miss Stebbing, you and your mom went out and had to do some market research and deal with 400 people going in and out of bars. Brandyn, can you talk to us a little bit about the market research that you do or you've done to work on your brand? And the follow-up question is, a lot of people look at the work that you guys are all doing and say, well, it's just really too tough. I don't know how I could ever start a clothing business or a candle business or designing a piece of technology, an app. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started? First off, starting again with that concept of market research around your designs.
Yeah, so a way that I market my brand is we've been on the news. We've been on the news a couple of times. We go to the mall every 2 weeks. Also on Instagram, we promote our stuff and take content and take videos to promote our brand. We also do speaking engagements at schools and go different places and talk to kids to encourage them to start their own business.
That's awesome. And is most of your business local to Philadelphia, or do you travel up to New York or over to Chicago or any place? And do you do a lot of online sales? How's your mix of business?
Our online sales we've gotten sales from a lot of different places online. We've gotten one from Alaska, California, Denver, just different places.
That's awesome. And how did you go about finding somebody that would manufacture and produce your designs?
So we're just starting to find manufacturers for our stuff. And today a guy said that he would be able to make all of our stuff for us. So, because before that, me and my mom, we made all of our stuff.
Wow. So you guys were hand pressing or ironing or doing it all, making it together?
Yeah, we were just making it all together.
Andrea, that's it sounds like it's got a similar sort of background to your story. Can you talk a little bit about how, again, you pitched what you wanted to do to your mom and dad? What were the next steps, and how did you go about doing some research into the market and coming up with scents and wax, and again, becoming one of the producers of really high quality candles in Australia?
So first I was watching so many YouTube videos on just how to make the candles because I was clueless on that. And then I was like, okay, so I know how to make them. I've got a kind of an idea. And I decided I need a wholesaler because it's not easy to find wax and scents that smell good and a good quality. So I went looking for a wholesaler and I did some practice candles. I chose the jars that I wanted, the wax that I found the best. And yeah, that was like the process of deciding what I wanted them and how I wanted them to look like. I did my labels. Yeah.
Who came up with your name and your design for all that? Was that all you?
I came up with the design.
Yep.
Actually, no. I think one of my mum's friends came up with the design and I thought it was really nice. So we used that design, and then the name I chose, because everyone used to call me Andy. They don't anymore, but now it just sounds good for the name.
Yep. That's good. That's good. Mitch, you're, unlike clothing or candles, very much sort of a technology-based business. Did you have a coding, or what was your skill set when you started the business, and what have you had to really look to augment in terms of making it become a reality?
So through school, I did programming classes. And so I made the very first kind of basic version of the system on web-based languages. And so used that to go through to show the investors, and had some wireframe mock-ups made through to know what I wanted it to look like and how I wanted it to flow. Yep. And from there, the investors basically helped us to get in the right people to build it. And now we have 4 full-time programmers constantly working on it to improve it and building new products.
That's great. That's amazing. And challenges that you see or you have kind of moving forward, what are some of the things that you're looking at in the coming year that you see as sort of little hurdles or opportunities, however you want to tackle them?
Our competitor has just announced an exact copy of us. So that's going to be a fun one to deal with, because we've taken so much market share from them that they're trying to keep as many customers as they can. So they've just announced that they're halving their prices by 50%. And they're also announcing a copy of us, which will be at 50%. So I've got to navigate something that's a copy of us to continue to try and bring through more customers. So that'll be the main hurdle for this year, I imagine.
Wow. And your market is typically Queensland, or and you mentioned the regulatory environment is state by state based.
Yes.
What's the opportunity for expansion into some of the other states?
In Queensland, there's 220 venues that legally have to operate an ID scanner. In other states, there's venues that have it on their liquor license, and others that implement it because scanners are proven to reduce alcohol-related violence and also help support police in solving crimes. On average, we help the police in Queensland to solve 1 serious crime a week, which is pretty cool to see. But going forward from that, there's a lot of other industries we're moving into, including sports clubs and RSLs, which there's 6,500 of them across Australia and New Zealand. So it's a much, much larger market. And we're moving into some other new and exciting industries this year as well.
Good, good. Well, that's amazing. Along with that big challenge, that's, again, sounds like there's also some big opportunities. Brandyn, can you talk to us a little bit about what you're excited about for the coming year and the future of Studying Never Stops?
Something that I'm excited about is probably all the people that we'll be able to meet and all the things that I can accomplish if I keep going. So I'm excited to just see how far I will be able to go.
That's awesome. Great, a great answer. Andrea, what about yourself? What are you excited most about with the future of Andy Candle Co?
Probably learning more things about and new techniques in making candles, and how I can make my business more unique and different to others.
Good, very good. In terms of how your peers see you, a lot of times being an entrepreneur is a bit of a challenge because you put yourself out there in terms of you're not like everybody else who's going to school and playing sports and studying. You're doing all of that and you're running a business. Can you talk about how you sort of navigate that, and has it been difficult? And maybe we'll go with you, start with you, Mitch, first, given that you're well and truly down that path.
It's a bit of an interesting one. I only went to school 3.5 days a week in grade 11 and 12. So essentially for me, the school said that as long as I maintained my grades, that they were happy for me to take a day and a half off a week, which was really beneficial because I was able to go into our office and work on the business, which was great for the business. But from a different level, it was kind of separating me more from the rest of my friends that were going to school every day. And like post school now, there was people that were kind of doubters, if you will, that said it wouldn't work or it would never happen. And funnily enough, one of them actually applied for a job with us last year, which is pretty funny. And then others from school that are like, yeah, it won't work, get messages on weekends where it's like, oh, can you get me free entry into this club, or can you get me a free drink at this club? They always come clawing back, asking for favors.
There's a couple of really interesting points you raised. The first one about only having to go to school for a couple days a week. I think there's a lot of students that look at you and say, man, if I could be successful and not have to go to school, 5 days a week, that's a positive. The challenge, like you mentioned, is, being away from some of that social aspect and your friends and, having to go to work, but you're doing something that you obviously enjoy doing and building. So you also mentioned, that will never work. I think one of the best books on entrepreneurship that's out there, that's in print, is by the co-founder of Netflix, who wrote the book aptly titled, That Will Never Work, Mark Randolph. So encourage everybody that if you're looking for something to read or to put into the school library, he talks, like I said, about just the fact that so many times people told him, yeah, that'll never work. But to your point, they all keep coming back around or surfacing at a later date. Andrea, can you talk a little bit about how it's going for you? Again, like I said, you're 7, so you're into sports, you're active, you're doing a lot of different things, and you're running a business. What kind of challenges, or how's that been from your perspective?
I find it pretty hard to navigate time to actually work on my business. So the weekends are like the best days to do it, because in the afternoons I've got sport or after school activities that I have to go to. So it's pretty hard to do stuff for my business during the week.
Yeah. And you're dealing with it, sounds like I said, do you find that other kids are like, do you tell a lot of other people about your business, or are you still kind of keeping it on the down low?
I'm still kind of keeping it on the down low.
You're waiting to go national until you're a global brand and then let everybody find out about you?
Yeah, I guess.
That's it. Brandyn, can you talk to us a little bit about, like I said, being in the States? And I know you love your sport, being a Philadelphia 76ers fan and being a basketballer. How have you managed to deal and just juggle everything and be perceived as a business person? Do a lot of your friends know you as Brandyn, who's running a business? And it sounds like if you're going to pop-up shops and doing stuff on the weekend, you're similar to Mitch and Andrea, that it's a busy part of your life.
Yeah. So my friends, they do know, they kind of figured it out. And being in school and still being a business owner, it's a lot of work, because on Fridays I have to go to the mall, and then on Thursday I have to do double the work so that I can go to the mall on Friday and have a day just at the mall selling the stuff and just having fun. And it's just like it's a lot that I have to do.
That's a good point. I think a lot of times people, friends, family, and the public kind of sees the upside and the success and don't realize that there's a lot of time and preparation and work that goes in behind the scenes to have gotten to the point where you're at, whether it's like I said, watching YouTubes and figuring out how to make candles, or, ironing or making your own clothing, or programming and hiring and trying to find people and what's happening there. So we're asking everybody that's online if there's any questions that have come in. That would be good. David, if there's anything that comes in, just let us know, and if you want to shout it in there, that would be good.
Yeah. Well, we've got one I might throw in there, which is an interesting one, and that question was, which entrepreneur would you most like to meet and why?
Ooh,
so I guess
question.
that goes out to everybody, but I think that's interesting for me to see that entrepreneurs and business people are getting a bit more of a name. They're getting a bit more in the media than they might have been when I was first starting out. So yeah, is there any answers to that question there?
Mitch, do you want to go first? Which entrepreneur would you most like to meet and why?
If we're talking dead or alive, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
I would say he would definitely be one that I would like to meet, given his kind of focus and understanding of user-centric design. A lot of people tend to forget it and don't understand their market properly, don't understand their customers properly. And other than that, I would probably say Dwayne Johnson, given that when he started, where his journey was, he had $7 in his pocket, and you look at him now, he's one of the most famous people that anyone and everyone knows, got tons of different brands, is a really successful actor.
That's awesome. Good. What about you, Andrea? Which entrepreneur would you most like to meet and why?
I don't really know many entrepreneurs. I just know a lot of like big brands. But like if I could meet anyone from like big brands like Rebel or Nike, that would be great.
Nice. And what is it about them? Would you like to understand how they became sort of those iconic brands, or?
Yeah.
Yep.
How they grew their business and how they got their business out there.
That's it. Well, those are some amazing brands.
We might suggest, Andy, that you read a book called Shoe Dog,
Yeah,
which is about the Nike story. So just throw that one out there for you in your spare time to grab that book. I know it's difficult as an entrepreneur and doing all these other things, but never stop studying. I've heard that's a good slogan. So get out there and read that book about Shoe Dog.
That's it. What about you, Brandyn? Who's an entrepreneur, dead or alive, that you would like to meet and why?
Probably LeBron, because I can kind of relate to him, because since he also plays basketball and he's also an entrepreneur by owning his own school and doing and having his own brand and stuff, it's kind of like I can relate to him a little bit.
Oh, that's great. I think there's a lot of great things that LeBron James is doing and has done. And like you mentioned, particularly in that education space, starting up his own schools and really giving kids, I think, teaching kids how to think differently, how to think like an entrepreneur, and understanding that, like I said, there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of problems like yourselves. It's really just taking those first couple steps, figuring out how to get there. Any other questions that we've got coming in through the chat group there, David?
So I've got another. There's a couple, and we encourage anyone else who's on the line to keep sending your questions in if you've got any. But someone has asked us, what is the best subject at school to study if you want to be an entrepreneur later on? So for a budding entrepreneur, what's the best subject at school for that? And I know Mitch is going to say like coding. Is that where you're heading?
Depends on the business and where they're interested in going. To be quite honest, I'm not a huge fan of business in school. I did it, and sorry for any teachers that are on the call. It's based on really old textbooks typically, and a lot of the teachers don't go through the up-to-date processes. So I didn't do business after grade 9 or grade 10, and I was just doing it on the side. I would say for me personally, modern history, while it's not directly related to business, was really, really helpful in terms of how they structure the assignments and the way that you get taught to write the assignments. I don't know whether it's the same in America for Brandyn, or whether Brandyn even gets to do modern history yet. But that was a big supporting subject for me in terms of how the writing structure was, and I still follow a lot of the those structures today when I'm writing different emails and stuff like that, and programming if you're wanting to go into tech.
Mitch, elaborate on that for us, and just what is that structure that you use that is so useful? Because I think everybody could get something out of that.
I would say kind of one of them is fully understanding the problem before you hope to solve it, was one of the big things that my history teacher was pushing for me to do. Because if you can't fully understand it, you have no hope in actually solving the problem. And so whenever we're looking at a particular focus point in history or modern history, you fully wanted to understand it, being able to look at which different books were most relevant and structuring it so that you have a really strong introduction to get people hooked in, and then talking to what the problem is, what your solution is. Obviously similar to English, but there's a little bit more detail in how the modern history ones are structured, and kind of closing out with something to reiterate how you're kind of finishing your point, and being able to understand what's happened in recent history to make sure that you don't repeat the same mistake and learn from what other people's kind of education points were.
Good.
And you're using that even in emails on a daily basis. That's great. That's great. So Andy, what do you think is the most important subject at school that helps you in your business, or that would help other people if they were going to run a business?
I've only just started grade 7, so I've only done like English, maths, science, history, but so far probably maths, because with a business you work with a lot of numbers and it gets confusing when you're trying to work out like the cost of stuff, how much profit you're going to make out of it, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, right. So break-even points and just getting all those numbers in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent. And are you good at maths? Is that something that you're pretty good at, and that helps you?
I'm not too bad at maths, but it does help my business knowing what I'm doing.
You just had that exam this morning, so we'll check back in next week and get the results. Brandyn, can you share with us your answer to that great question that came in terms of, is there been a class, or what do you think the best class or subject that you've had at school that's helped you with your business?
A class that's probably helped me with my business is probably English, because English is really helped my vocabulary, like when talking to other people about the business or about business, it helps my vocabulary to sound like I know more about it.
That makes sense. They often say that the level that you talk is the level that you get delegated to. So that means that, again, if you can't talk about the business and what your contribution margin or your market share, at some point they're not going to really take you seriously and just say, oh, this is just somebody that said so. I'm hearing a common thread in terms of just communication and being able to articulate and talk about what the problem is, and then being able to present your solution. So very, very important. Do you guys have any other questions or any questions for each other while we're here? We've opened it up to the group, but Mitch, Andrea, Brandyn, if you've got any questions for each other, we're happy to go there if you want to ask each other any questions or give each other any suggestions.
What's been your biggest struggle points, both of you? Or what's been your biggest hurdle that you've overcome or had to try and overcome?
Good.
My biggest struggle is probably was probably selling the stuff, because when we got to the mall and did different pop-up shops, especially when we first started, I was like really shy, and it was hard for me to just go up to someone and speak to them. But Now that I've been doing my business more, I've kind of grown out of it and I'm less shy and I can actually talk to people now.
Good, good. Andrea?
A struggle for me would be trying to find the right way to tell people about my business and get my business like out there and let people know about it.
So is it more the selling in terms of communicating what you're doing, or is it more the marketing and getting it out there?
The marketing and getting it out there.
Yeah. Well, those are interesting points and a great question, Mitch. We'll be bringing you back as a co-host at our next session next month, next term. Brandyn, you actually raised an interesting point, and maybe I'll ask Mitch and Andrea, do you consider yourselves either an extrovert or an introvert?
It depends who I'm talking with, I think, because I get shy, like really shy around people that I'm not very familiar with or I don't know much.
Yep.
But when I'm with my friends, I'm loud and yeah.
Yep. What about you, Mitch? Would your friends say extrovert or introvert?
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works and say extroverted introvert.
All right, for everybody that's out there, we're all confused. Can you tell us what that means?
Introverted, but leaning closer to the extroverted side of introvert. So I still, like in big kind of settings where it's not something that I have to talk about or know a lot about, I don't actively go out and talk about it. But if it's something that I'm confident in and know a lot about, I have no problems going and speaking in front of hundreds of people. Yeah. But otherwise I do like my own time and my own space.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. And we're going to keep doing that little informal survey with our panels, because I think one of the big misconceptions about entrepreneurs is that they are these big extroverts. And Mitch, you mentioned, Steve Jobs, who was an intensely sort of private and introverted type of person. But when need be, he would get up on those stages at those Apple launches and absolutely own that whole room. And Brandyn, you mentioned that you having to go do a pop-up shop and talk to hundreds of people, on a busy Saturday, Sunday morning at the mall. That must have been, terrifying the first time you had to go out and do it. But I think if everybody was watching this, they would say, Brandon's a big extrovert. You look there, you're confident, you're articulate, you're talking to us. Andrea, the same thing. You're very well spoken. I think you've done these markets and these pop-ups too, but you probably didn't get up out of bed going, yoo-hoo, I get to go talk to hundreds of people today. This is going to be the best day ever. And maybe there was because of some inventory and some expenses that you needed to make up to cover the day. But it's been interesting to think about that. David, we're getting close to the end. Any other questions or anything else we want to touch base on?
There was a question for Andy, just asking her what her candles are made of and how do you make the different smells. So that was a kind of a specific one, but are you allowed to share that, or is that trade secret?
I can share. So our wax is coconut soy wax, and we put the scent in the candles, and we get our scents from a wholesaler, and they produce oils, fragrances, and I handpick them and choose which ones I find unique or not many businesses have, and then I choose them and put them in a candle and see how they smell.
And I can attest they do smell really, really good. And when you started selling your candles, you kind of focused on some of the non-traditional, more sort of interesting scents. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I wanted them to be fun and different. I don't have many floral scents, so we might be getting some of them, but I've got lots of food scents and sweet scents, as well as tropical floral, tropical scents. Good.
So we're going to be wrapping up.
I'll just throw something in quickly for Andy. I'm just curious. So I used to follow the Jelly Bellies business, and they were the jelly beans, and the jelly beans had like a range of different flavors, and there was stuff like popcorn and tomato sauce, and like really like they had every single flavor under the sun. And that was kind of big and brand new and exciting and different when I was a kid. And they had some Halloween flavors, which were gross flavors. So it was like boogers and dog poo and like really gross flavors. Now, obviously, they were still edible, so there was nothing inedible, but it was kind of like a Halloween or a prank or something like that. Have you ever thought about going down that path with Halloween or something and going, we're going to get some really like, cane toad smelling candles or something like that? Have you thought about that?
No, never thought of that in a candle.
There might be a
Don't
reason,
understand
David, why
why.
you're in
Don't
education
understand
and
why.
Andrea is a successful
Yeah.
candle business operator.
All right, so we're not going to go down the Halloween candles with the really gross, like rotting meat or something like that, or dead fish is not a candle flavor that you're thinking of going down.
No, it would make the room
All right.
so bad.
All right, don't worry, I've got no ideas for you, Mitch or Brandon. You're safe. Your
Your
businesses are completely
safe.
safe. I'm not going to destroy them.
Before we wrap up, though, again, our audience is largely sort of primary school, secondary school students. And the idea of doing this is really just to give other students an opportunity to see some of the amazing things that students like you can and are doing. So if you had a couple pieces of advice, it may only be one, it may be a couple, either somebody shared with you or that you'd like to share with anybody else, what would be your piece of advice that you would give to this audience, which is fellow students, and their thoughts or advice on starting up and being an entrepreneur, being a business owner? Brandyn, you want to go first? You started with you. We'll kick you off through the final round.
To never give up, and if you really want to achieve it, continue to do it and just keep going, and whatever, don't let anybody say anything, and just always keep going.
Good. That's awesome. What about you, Andrea?
Similar advice to Brandyn, like don't give up, you can do it. And it may be tough at the start, but just keep going and don't stop.
Good. What about you, Mitch?
I would say something a little bit different to those guys. Definitely very important, but understanding that entrepreneurship is a bit of a roller coaster. It's really a fun journey. It has its ups and downs, but being a kid essentially in high school or primary school, you're in one of the best positions to be an entrepreneur, because you get given so much time and attention from anyone that you reach out to. I know for a fact that when I reached out to Microsoft, that the only reason they accepted my first meeting request when I walked into the room was because I was a 14-year-old kid. If a 32-year-old me walked into that, they'd be like, no, go away. You get a lot of people that are wanting to see other young people succeed, and you don't have any responsibilities in terms of kids or whatever to have to look after. You don't have bills to pay. You live typically under the roofs of your parents, so you have a huge support network around you. So if you fail, you have a safety net to catch you. And so in my personal opinion, starting a business in school is one of the best times that you can.
That's awesome. Those are some great points, and well spoken in terms of what to take advantage of, the situation that students find themselves in, and have a go. I think you're probably experiencing more so than most of the student entrepreneurs what business looks like in terms of some of those responsibilities, and having payroll and having employees that are into the teens in terms of numbers. So on that note, we're going to wrap up, but before we go, just want to make sure that everyone understands or has, can say special thanks and visit all of these three amazing entrepreneurs, their businesses, their brands. We will put some other ways to connect with them, either from their social media or email. If there is further follow-up questions, by all means. Brandyn, joining us from Philadelphia, go to the 76ers. Studying Never Stops, Andy Candleco, Andrea from Brisbane, the sunny Gold Coast, and everyone that needs a candle, by all means, jump into it. And Mitch, also from the Gold Coast, solving that problem around identification. Anybody that needs to go out to a licensed venue, anybody that's, like I said, you have parents that have a bottle shop visit, need to take advantage of that, by all means, look at this. Love you guys, your work, and big shout out and big thank you for joining us today. One of the things that we really appreciate in terms of working with entrepreneurs is this fact that you guys all take advantage to take time out of your busy days and pay it back and pay it forward. So if there's anything that we can do at First Pivot or Kids Unlimited, by all means, keep us in mind. The door is always open. On that note, we'll wrap up. Thank you guys so much. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Brandon. Thanks again, Andrea. Thanks again, Mitch.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. All right, I'll wrap this meeting up now. Thanks, Jim. Great job. Good to meet Mitch. We'll see you around the traps.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks again,
Bye.
Mitch.
Right, bye.
And I meant what I said earlier. I'll message you with or send me an email with where you're at.
Thank you. Will do. See ya.
Take care.